Welcome to the Sober and Happy podcast, where we talk about all things recovery related, how to navigate the challenges that we'll face along the way on our journey towards our best lives, and how we could go from living a life of simply just being sober to a life where we're both sober and happy. If you've spent any amount of time in recovery, either in meetings of recovery or in recovery groups on the internet, you'll see that relapses happen at a staggering rate. It is so common that you'll often hear people say that relapse is a part of recovery, as if it is a certainty that you will relapse at some point. But it doesn't have to be. Today we'll talk about some of the top causes of relapse that I have seen, ways we could recognize relapse red flags, and the things we could do so that from this point out we could live a life free of relapsing. So buckle up, this is going to be a great episode. Welcome back. The Sober and Happy newsletter is officially in publication. In the newsletter, I'll be talking about topics related to recovery along with sharing resources that I have found to be helpful in my recovery journey. If you're interested in receiving the letter, just go to soberandhappy.com/newsletter and sign up. I would love to hear feedback on it and any suggestions on things you would like to see in it. Okay, now back to the episode. Relapse is an unfortunate part of our stories for many of us on this journey. I tried 2 previous times to quit drinking. The first time was after an arrest when I decided I was going to try to quit drinking. The second time was after I completely burned my life to the ground and decided that I needed to take a break for a while. As you can imagine, when I only tried, I tried and failed. And that break I took lasted about a week. So what was different the last time? From the outside, my alcoholism had progressed, but in the previous 2 times, it was at the point that I knew alcohol was ruining my life. So I don't think that was much of a factor. There was something deeper that shifted in my mindset this last time. And that is the first reason I want to talk about on why people relapse. It's because we don't fully commit to our recovery and we end up putting up with the results of someone who is not fully committed. I talked a moment ago about something shifting inside me the last time. When I decided to go to rehab, I honestly didn't know if it was possible for me to stay sober since I hadn't seen anyone that drank like me get and stay sober. However, a few weeks into recovery, I decided that no matter what, I was going to try anything and everything in my power to do it. If it was possible, I was going to find out because I was going to do it. So what are the steps we could take to fully commit? Most of the other topics in this episode are part of it, but the first thing you could do right now is change the way you talk about your recovery. So much of the talk around recovery is aimed at the attitude of relapse being a certainty. If you tell yourself that relapse is a part of recovery, then you're already, if even subconsciously, giving yourself permission to relapse. Relapse is a part of many of our stories. It could be a great tool for learning to prevent future relapses, but relapse is the opposite of recovery. If we want to live a life of recovery, we must walk and talk like someone who is never going to drink again. Who do you think is the person most likely to relapse? The person who confidently says, "I don't drink," when offered a drink, or the person who says, "Well, I'm trying not to drink anymore, so I probably shouldn't." Even if your mind is screaming the second sentence, start practicing saying the first, and you will eventually become that person. I like the saying, "act as if." This is similar to the "fake it until you make it" phrase you'll often hear, but I think words matter. And if I'm telling myself I am faking it, then I know it isn't real. When we act as if, we're actively working on changing into the person we want to be. So how would a person who is committed to never drinking again speak and act? Model yourself after that person, walk the walk, and talk the talk. This leads to the next reason I see that often leads to relapses, and that is that we're not living the life of someone clean and sober because we're holding on to too many things in the past. We often try to remove the alcohol and keep everything else in our lives the same. Here's the harsh reality. You're going to have to give up a lot of things if you want to stay sober. You can't just live the same life minus the alcohol. You can't hang out with the same people, do the same things, continue the same habits, and expect to live a new life. Does this mean you can't ever do anything again and have to give up all your friends? No. But in the beginning, I had to make a lot of sacrifices. I had friends like I was that did nothing but drink, so I didn't need to be around those people. I also couldn't go somewhere and be around alcohol without having an insane craving to drink, so during that stage, I had to stop going to those places. And I know the idea of giving up these things could be completely overwhelming. You might feel like you're giving up everything you love, but those things you're holding on to are the things the old you loved doing. If you're quitting drinking, you obviously see that you need to change, so why are you holding on to an old version of yourself? Here's the good news. As you grow and evolve, you will start to learn what you love doing. You won't always have to avoid being around alcohol like it's the plague. There are a lot of things I enjoyed doing before that I still do today. I still go watch live sporting events, attend concerts, hang out with friends, bowl in a league, go shoot pool, and many other things. I also have found many other things I love doing. I wouldn't trade my life today for the old life that I struggled so much to let go of. You have to be willing to first let go so you can move towards the life that you want and deserve. This leads me to the next topic that I see so many people struggle with is that we often focus solely on what we think we are losing from our old life instead of what we could be gaining in our new life. I think it was Tony Robbins that I heard say, "You can't drive a car staring in the rearview mirror." However, that is what many of us in recovery do. If we constantly stare in the rearview mirror instead of through the windshield, we will certainly crash. Recovery is the same. If we only focus on the past instead of looking forward to our future, we will also crash. This is why if you listen to my podcast, you'll see that most of my focus is moving towards the amazing life that you deserve. We just sit around and talk about our drinking, the mistakes that we made, and ways to avoid drinking. That is still keeping our focus on alcohol. That is just a small part of recovery, just like the rear view mirror is so small. But the windshield is much larger and the view is so much better. We need to start focusing on all the things we could gain in our new life, all the new opportunities that we can now chase, the relationships that are really important to us that we can now heal. Becoming a person that we could be proud of. You are not your past. Those were just events that led you to the place that you are in this moment. You have the opportunity to become the person you've always wanted to be. Imagine that person on the horizon through your windshield. Put the car in drive and start moving towards that new life. Now, that doesn't mean we could just erase the past and ignore the effects it has on us. This is probably the biggest thing holding people back. We can't simply stop an addiction and ignore the reasons that led us to it in the first place. This could be trauma from our past, guilt and shame from the things that we did while we were still drinking and using, or even chasing the things that we felt alcohol or drugs were providing us. When we simply remove what we see as a solution for these things and don't treat the cause, we'll often seek out other things to try to cover up our feelings. This is why I believe most people struggle with multiple addictions. You'll hear the term like cross addiction or addictive personality thrown around, but I simply think those are cases of us being unhealed and being stuck in the habit of seeking quick fixes for how we feel. But when we start dabbling in other destructive habits, we'll start experiencing the consequences of those, and once the consequences get too painful, we'll often reach back to whatever our core addiction is. In the current 12 years that I've been sober, the closest time I ever came to drinking was when I decided to start dating for all the wrong reasons. I felt stagnant in my recovery, I was lonely, and I didn't yet know how to love myself. So I went out seeking someone to fill the void I still had inside me. I found someone who was able to temporarily fill that hole, and it felt amazing. The best I had ever felt since I got sober. I honestly think it was the closest thing I found that was comparable to that feeling of the first drink. Instantly, it felt like all my problems inside me were finally fixed. Here was the problem though. When we date someone to fix how we feel, we put all the responsibility of feeling good on someone else. I became needy, insecure, and only could feel that feeling if she was constantly reassuring me and giving me the attention I needed, how I needed it, and when I needed it, which was pretty much all the time. As you could imagine, that could become tiring for the other person rather quickly, and before I knew it, she was sitting on my couch telling me how she could no longer date me. I was devastated. That hole that she filled became even bigger. And the next day, I left work early and found myself in my car in the parking lot of a liquor store, fighting myself to not walk in and get a bottle. Right as I was about to give in, a man knocked on my window asking me for money. He didn't even lie to me what it was for. His hands were shaking as bad as mine used to in the morning. My mind instantly flashed back to my morning routine of sitting in the bathroom, hands shaking, trying to keep down that first drink without puking. I gave him the $20 I had in my hand that I was going to use for alcohol, told him I knew exactly how he felt, gave him my number if he ever wanted help, put my car in drive, and drove home. I don't know if that was the power of divine intervention, the universe working to help me see clearly for a moment, or just random circumstances. However, I believe in my heart that without it, I would have drank that day and have no idea where I would be right now. I would love to tell you I learned my lesson from that experience, took a break from dating to heal myself first, and never repeated that cycle. Instead, I chased that high a few more times before I finally learned my lesson. Which brings me to the number one reason I think people relapse. We try the same thing over and over expecting different results. I see so many people relapse, try to get sober again, do the same exact thing, relapse again, and wonder why they can't stay sober. There is so much valuable information in a relapse. We could look at the patterns and behaviors that lead to the relapse and make changes with the next attempt. Once we start recognizing these, we could even start seeing new similar patterns and stop them before they lead to another relapse. I have a process that I've used that has helped many people stop the pattern of relapsing. If you're interested in diving deeper into that, check out episodes 8 and 10 where I talk about that in detail. If you're struggling with relapses in the past, I want you to know that you are not a failure. It doesn't mean that you didn't try hard enough or lack willpower. It isn't a sign that you're never going to be able to get and stay sober. The fact that you're trying to get sober shows incredible courage and a desire to change. You may just need to do a little more work to recognize what is leading to your relapses and do some hard work to make some major changes in your life. Recovery takes some serious work. Life is still going to be challenging, but the rewards are so amazing, and I know you can do it. I want to thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you're finding value from listening to my podcast. If you are, I'm asking for 2 huge favors from you this week that would help me. Share the episode with one other person, and please subscribe to the podcast, both of which helps it grow. New episodes come out each Friday, so I look forward to connecting with you next week. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and keep living sober and happy.